Welcome to the Direct Response Podcast. I'm your host, Travis Ketchum, founder of Campaign Refinery, joined today by David Cartolano of Wealthy Inbox. How's it going, man?
Hey, can't complain, man. Let's do this.
Living the dream. Cool. So today we're talking about high converting SaaS sales funnels, which is hyper specific, a little meta for us as a SaaS company. But I know that you've worked with a lot of different offers and different sales flows and funnels. So I think we should talk about a little bit about offer design, funnel design, what the objectives are, because just because you're a SaaS doesn't mean you always sell via premium, doesn't mean you sell via high ticket. Like there's all these things in between. So let's just break down. I mean, I know we talked about funnels before, but like, what is SaaS to you as someone who doesn't run a software as a service? Like what is it really like? What does it encompass to you as a marketer?
For me, it's a tool. It's a hammer. And SaaS founders are so smart, much smarter than me. And they get really into their tool and they're like, yeah, here's the wood of the hammer. It's mahogany and it's got like this silver, perfectly engineered edge to hit the nail just perfectly. And I'm like, just give me a hammer that works, right? I want a handle that works and a head that doesn't break when I hit the nail. And I want to predictably hit the nail again and again. So for me as a muggle, all I want is a tool that works well. I can rely on it. And for me, it's not about the price. It's about the use case and about quality.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think that it's good for SaaS owners to zoom out a bit, and because it's so easy for us to fall in love with the romance of the product itself, necessarily, like not necessarily the actual outcome. And when you disconnect those things, you've broken the model. So it's important to realize that on balance, your customers don't actually care about your tool because they aren't necessarily actually looking for your tool. They're looking for the outcome that your tool can enable, right? The quote I love bringing up all the time, ex-CEO Black & Decker, we don't sell drills, we sell holes. Well, as someone who actually takes money in exchange for a tool, you got to understand that's not what you're really doing, right? That may be the physical transaction that's happening, but that's not the emotional buying decision transaction that's happening. So let's talk about sales funnel design then and how you can approach this, because there's all different kinds of ways that you sell, mechanisms you use to sell, and I'll just kind of hit on some of them and then we can talk about the effective sort of preamble and post-sale scenarios. I think that would be useful, right? So usually when people think about software as a service, they're usually focused on, hey, I come and buy a widget, the widget does the thing, done deal. But when you think about pricing and ascension and lifetime value and all these metrics and acronyms and different version of alphabet soup that SaaS people get enamored with, you have freemium models where you have something that's totally free that a user can come and sign up for, minimal friction, no credit card required usually, right? And they can sample. This is like the Costco sample lady of software as a service. They can just sample around and see what's what and not pay a penny, right? But you can imagine the commitment level of those types of prospects and potential customers is much lower than someone who has to go through a big vetted sales process and talk to a sales rep, and the contracts are 5, 6, 7 figures, right? And then there's everywhere in between that, right? Between high friction and essentially no friction. But all of those can either be completely self-service, software as a service, never talk to a human, to the software as a service is a component of the solution. Usually on the higher ticket things, there's usually a more encompassing solution that has, human resource services and provisioning and things that have to be configured and all this like kind of fancy stuff. Even if the end result that the customer logs in and uses day to day is essentially just a tool, there's usually solutions surrounding that are tied into the sale. And so, the question you have to ask yourself as a platform, where in that spectrum makes sense for me? What kind of business do I want to design for myself? What kind of customer am I selling to? What kind of experience does the customer demand, right? Because you can imagine if you're selling to Fortune 100, they're not going to get super excited about a freemium tool, right? Because they have some ego in that. They're like, I'm Fortune 100. I need the enterprise solution, right? So when you're thinking about designing an offer, David, and you think about that spectrum, and you've already identified what SaaS is to you, which of those gets you most excited from I'm gonna sell this thing. I'm gonna sell this to an audience. What version of friction?
So friction for me is if it doesn't have direct utility. Utility is my U word. So if there's a software and it's got all these bells and whistles and it's super cool and there's 37 different features and all these micro SaaSes attached to it, I'm like, this is so confusing. Tell me what your software does in one sentence. Clear, crystal, third grade reading level. So, and if you can't do that, okay, that's totally fine. Look in the mirror and say it to yourself again and again and again until you come up with, a sentence that you can tell your fifth grade nephew. And he goes, okay, I get it. You know what I mean? Otherwise, you can have the coolest proprietary, I don't know, making this up, like trading signal software, or since AI is all the rage, you can have the most amazing chatbot ever. But I hate to break it to you, most of the world doesn't know what a chatbot is, but they do know a little window on a website where you can talk to our team to help you. That's it. That is it. I know you have so much code and so much expertise behind it, but for someone with someone who just uses the thing, just make it one sentence. And I think marketers will try and pressure you into getting super specific. And I think as a recovering marketer, I think you don't need to be down to the molecule specific about it. You know what I mean? Like you
Yeah,
don't, oh, we use proprietary code to help you do this. I was like, what the fuck is proprietary code? We don't need, no, tell us what it does.
let's actually use that AI chatbot. I think it's a great example because it's
Yeah.
the hotness, right? So like, there's two ways of talking about it, and I think we can really highlight what we're trying to tell you here. So there is I'm romantic with the idea of the product, which is our AI chatbot uses cutting edge LLMs with with the machine learning to diagnose issues and preempt customer problems. It's like, okay, part of that kind of makes sense, but the rest of that is for your benefit as the product owner to talk about because it makes you feel important. Conversely, if you said our AI support chatbot gives you 24-hour, 7-day-a-week customer support, no sick days, no overtime, always gets the right answer.
That is it.
Because you're eliminating the human cost and component. That's all they care about. You're making it faster, easier, cheaper, or all three.
It's one thing to say improve email deliverability. It's another thing to say stay out of spam. And that for me, even though I know what email deliverability is, I get it, I got it. But to most people, they don't know what it is. And I think a great exercise would be take the description of your software from your website, plug it into ChatGPT or Claude, and just say, simplify this down to one sentence for a third grader to understand. Create 10 variations. Pick the one that you'll like the most. And that's it. Keep it in a box. Don't make it complicated. I think what's the saying? If you can't dazzle them with your smile, you baffle them with your bullshit. Just keep it simple, man. Keep it simple. I think like Spotify, they don't, what do they do? They're a streaming service. You listen to your favorite artist anytime. Done.
Yeah, or the old Steve Jobs thing, 1,000 songs in your pocket with the original iPod,
Done.
Yeah.
So that's really it from a marketer standpoint, from a consumer standpoint. Drop the passion, give it to me straight.
For sure. Now let's talk about a couple ways that you can actually run a sales funnel for some of these offers. Now that you understand the offer positioning, right? Because we talked about the different types of friction from freemium all the way up to high touch. You have to book a sales call, and we don't even reveal any pricing anywhere on the website, which drives me nuts when that's the case. I mean, for high volume bespoke things, it does make sense to an extent, but like not even having a starting point listed anywhere on your site is lunacy to me. Like, you would want to actually just like, even if you started at 50 grand a month, let's say something that is untouchable for many, many businesses, but that is a prereq. You would actually, in my opinion, want to state that to disqualify your junk leads. right? So that let me zoom out a little bit here and make sure we get some clarity. So we talked about different levels of friction and the offer positioning in general about how to think about it, right? Distill it down, benefit, 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 benefit. That's all your customer cares about. They don't care about your tool. They only care about the benefit. No one wakes up in the morning saying, I wish I could buy this software tool. I wish I could buy this training. I wish I could buy this thing. I wish I could buy this Apple Watch. Like, no, they say, I want a specific benefit to come of it. Now, ways you can run this funnel is going to vary depending on what your primary sales mechanism is. So if it is primarily self-service, the mechanisms you choose are probably very different than if it's primarily high-touch sales team driven. So let's kind of break that into the two buckets. If you are primarily self-service driven, which our past software was primarily self-service, you're going to want to provide experiences that the customer can get a sample of what is to come and ideally pull them into some kind of activation mechanism. So for us, it was usually a trial, or they can get limited time access or a limited scope of features for a limited time so they can get a feel for what it is so they can make an educated buying decision without ever having to talk to somebody. And then naturally, they would ascend to buy a version of your software. And you ideally gate your specific features at specific price points if you have multiple tiers that only appeal to higher end buyers. And as they only even notice that they exist as they come up against the limitation in a way that is understandable. So for example, in our past software, it was a contest tool. So as you can imagine, hey, I just want to run a contest. I want to have people enter. I want to pick a winner. I want it to integrate with my email tool. Really simple. Every version of our software did that, right? I want to remove branding. I want to add my own domain. And I want to install a tracking pixel because I'm going to be running Facebook ads. That is a different tier. But if you're running a basic campaign, you never even felt that limitation. It wasn't until you said, hey, I'm going to spend money on Facebook ads. How do I do that? Great. That's our next plan, right? Because you're already more invested. You're a bigger customer, right? So there's a natural ascension. Oh, I want to run this for clients. Oh, do you? Would you like it to be white labeled? Would you like sub accounts? Would you like sub user management? You wouldn't even feel that until you were in that scenario and you were a larger, more complicated organization with bigger and stronger needs. So all of them started with a free trial. And then as the growth and scope of the organization demanded it, that's when you felt the constraints of the smaller plan and would naturally ascend without much effort, right? But you didn't feel penalized for being on vanilla version.
And it seems to me that this is just an upsell funnel. For any of you internet marketing people, it's the first level is solving a simple problem, right? That's the front end product. And then whatever the front end product creates, and hopefully if, you're a decent business owner and human being, front end product actually solves their problem and isn't supposed to be an ascension model, right? But the front end problem is solved, which creates another problem, like you said, where it's like, yeah, we have this contest, but we want to integrate it with our tracking pixel now and have a custom domain because we already have those assets and we want to connect them. Great, next level. So it seems to me that it's just about solving more complex problems as they show up based on what the user's going through.
Yeah, it looks like anything. Like there's both a funnel in like the sense of like, lead sales, whatever, right? You normally think of, but there's also a funnel in the way that the market is shaped. And what I mean by that is the bulk of the market is at the lowest price point with the most simplistic needs. And so if you look at like a price elasticity chart, your goal is to help fill the entire graph with an offer that makes sense for each specific segment without pissing off the one below it or the one above it. And that is the art form of software as a service, right? It's not to just like extract maximum money per se. It's to basically divvy yourself so that you can have an appropriate offer with an appropriate feature set that does not throw shade or piss off a segment that is sandwiching it, but is a natural ascension as the needs become more complex because they're paying for more value, right? They are somehow paying for more value. Now, I think that pretty well covers the way that most of the core free trials. So then it just becomes a mechanism of how do I fill as many free trials as possible, right? So for us, that was getting on podcasts and driving into a lead magnet that talked about the value to sell them on the idea of contests that then drove them to free trials, right? It was SEO traffic. It was affiliates. It was just essentially like, okay, we know what it's structured like. We know we got our positioning right. Now it's looking at that funnel again. How to get as many leads at the top of that and let them work their way down the little machine until it spits out at the end as many front-end trials, because we know then from the front-end trials, then you get a certain conversion, a certain conversion, a certain conversion on the way up. And that's how that math works, plain and simple. Now, that calculus changes a bit when you add friction to the front end and the complexity of the even base level solution goes up. And I think that our current SaaS, Campaign Refinery, actually fits a good example of that as well, sort of this like mid-tier friction, right? Because we're not generally selling day one 7-figure contracts, right? We do have pretty significant customers at the high end that have grown into that, but that is not usually the day one thing. Our usual product offering is pretty squarely mid-market. But we've intentionally added friction to that for several reasons. Mainly, it's deliverability driven, so we can ensure quality of who's getting on the platform. But we also want an opportunity to help highlight how we're different. And when a lot of customers are browsing one ESP, one email service provider versus another one, right, they line them all up and they say, I'm squinting really hard. I can't really tell the difference. And we've found that by nudging more of them into a process where they actually talk to somebody on the phone, not only does it dramatically increase the quality of senders on the platform, which is a net positive for every sender on the platform, because all their neighbors, it's like buying a affordable house in a great neighborhood. Just by nature, you're going to be better off long term. But it also means that we get a bespoke period of time to understand their pain and show how our unique feature set is best suited to fix that pain, right? There's a lot of email service providers that you can go sign up for without ever talking to anyone, but by having this extra little layer of friction, our conversion rate of those who are interested goes up dramatically. Right. And so that is primarily book a call, right? And so then, okay, instead of a free trial, how do we increase book a call, right? And actually, the funny part is the mechanisms are often the same, right? There's podcasts, there's affiliates, there's SEO, but I would say that the emphasis on earning trust, likability, and knowledge on the front end becomes of increasing importance. So that means things like webinars and podcasts might have outsized value for someone who is selling software primarily through sales calls, because you want to sort of pre-sell them and indoctrinate them on your ideals, on what makes you unique, on how you are the best possible solution to solve that problem that they're having and get them out of pain, as opposed to just hoping that whatever you put on your website does the trick, because you're asking them to do more. Because you're asking them to get on a phone call with you, they need to be more invested in solving their problem than a freemium level account or even a really cheap level software, $10 a month or whatever, right? Like just the frame of mind and the risk tolerance is different.
And I had a question pop up where I'm sure if you're listening to this, you might really like this. So Travis, how do you find those whale clients? How do you attract the people that, they pay what 100 people on the basic plan will pay? What's your process for finding people like that and retaining them?
Yeah, great questions, because, retention is a big piece of how successful everything else is, especially when you're a recurring product. But the way that we attract the bigger customers is twofold. One is, I would say a lot of it comes from referral, word of mouth. If you bend over backwards to surprise, delight, and really make your current customers happy, they will sing your praises in corners of a room you will never even be allowed into. And so that is a big component of it for driving them. And talk about pre-sale, right? I said it, outsized emphasis on webinars and podcasts. Well, what's a version of that that's even more impactful? Someone they already have known for 2 decades that is using you and loves the experience, loves the outcome, and goes, oh my God, we doubled our email traffic when we switched to Campaign Refinery. Like that is going to outweigh any amount of me telling someone that we do a better job than another ESP. And so that's going to prime the pump, and they have no problem jumping on a call and talking with us about their problem. Oftentimes their friend will even try to do a warm intro, right? They'll send even an email to support and say, hey, this is my friend. I think they belong on this platform. Like they're pre-selling in that environment. But it's also important to know that how you structure your offer, how you talk about your products, who you are attracting is actually less important than who you are trying to disqualify as you work your way up, right? So not that you're trying to talk about the fancy LLMs in the AI example, or you're trying to talk about the widgets or the humdingers that are going to be amazing. It's presenting language in such a way that lets the person who's slightly more sophisticated, slightly further along the education path know that you are a true authority without rubbing it in their face. This is a
Love it.
very delicate balance to hit. So you want to demonstrate domain expertise, and you can do that through content, right? That you either produce yourself, like these videos, like other podcasts or webinars. You can also do it by saying, look, our content team has produced all these things that are talking about problems at a deep level that are going to solve specific pain points to show the breadth and depth of your domain expertise. And then the way that you keep them is you do what you freaking say you're going to do. I know it sounds really simple, but like you make a promise and you fulfill it. Like if we take a non-software example of this, if you need your roof replaced, you call a roofer who can actually replace your roof and make the leak stop, right? But it's amazing how many contractors can't show up on time, can't do the quote they said they did, that they quoted you. They can't do it on the timeline they quoted you. They take half your money and then don't show up for 2 months. Like there's all these problems where like to stand out in a contractor world, just show up when you say you're going to show up, do the job you say you're going to do for the price you said you would do it for. And I would say actually the same thing is true in the software world, in the tool world. Do what you say you're going to do, when you say you're going to do it, for the price and complexity you say that it will require, and you'll win fans left and right.
And the word of mouth, positive or negative, is so powerful. I've used a lot of different email providers. People will come to me and ask, hey, what do you use? I use blank. And I will tell them, I don't use blank because it's done X, Y, and Z. And I suggest that you don't do it because it will cause A, B, and C. So, and I will say that every time. Why? Because a certain software, I'm not naming any names, didn't deliver on what they said. And because of that, I had a bad experience as a customer. And I will tell other people who trust me in this domain, I will tell them and say, hey, no, I actually wouldn't suggest that for you because because I care about you and I wouldn't want something bad to happen to you. And I do the opposite when someone says, hey, David, what's your favorite software for this? I go, I know just the one for you.
Yeah.
And I will do that again and again and again. Why? Because the software has delivered on what it said it would do. The customer support, I know we didn't, that's a different topic, but the customer support is responsive and they're not deceptive in their marketing, right? If there's a lot of spit and shine, it's because the actual tool isn't that good, or it's kind of like a duck on the water where it's calm on the surface, but paddling furiously underneath. So yeah, that's from my experience as a consumer. I think word of mouth, it's always there and it's either working in your favor or not in your favor. So something to be really careful about. Just
and
fill on
and
what you
and
say.
and every platform has problems. We certainly have had
Yeah.
our fair share of problems over the years, but I think that you earn a lot of trust when you're transparent about what happened, what you're doing to resolve it, and you can get to a place of stability afterwards. There's always going to be brand damage when that happens, but I think you can mitigate a huge chunk of that if you are transparent, truthful, and consistent in your efforts to really make sure that your customer outcomes are great.
Yeah. There's a nonprofit charity that I support, and they have a section on their website in their main menu on their homepage that says our mistakes. Who do you think I'm going to give money to? Like that's incredible, you know? So I wouldn't make your mistakes the talk of the party whenever your name is mentioned. You know what I mean? So I think being upfront and apologizing and saying, hey, this is what's going on. We're so sorry. We're making it through, rather than just kind of brushing it off and just having those mistakes and that stigma associated with your software for years and years and years. It really makes a difference. Take the cockroaches out of your hamburgers, please.
Yeah. And don't let a rough 30, 60, 90-day period impact your business forever. Like, own it. Understand what went wrong. It's teams lose the Super Bowl, right? That doesn't mean that they never come back. It, they look at the game film, they understand what went wrong, they make adjustments, they iterate, and then they put their best product on display in the future to show people what's going to be the new standard going forward. This is a thing that happens everywhere. I think if you can implement and reflect that in your software business, just the way that it is in sports or any other facet of your life, that honesty, transparency, and consistency goes a really long way to minimize that. So anyway,
Yeah.
I know we went long on this topic, but I hope that if you are software as a service and you're looking for ways to ramp these things up, go check out our offer or traffic pieces of content. I think that will help sort of fill the funnel. But think a lot about the level of friction that you want, the way you want to both qualify and disqualify. And like David said, take your website, go through it in ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, and say, explain this to a third grader in one sentence and give me 10 versions of it is great. For me, the litmus test, this isn't saying my mom's a third grader by any chance, but like my mom is fairly non-technical. And so getting to the point where she could finally tell people what I do, as opposed to, well, I assume it's legal because he hasn't been arrested, which is what she used to say, was like a big step forward for me in understanding and conveying what we do in software and for a living. So thanks so much, David. Where can people find out more about you and what you're all about?
Absolutely. You can go to wealthyinbox.news. It's my newsletter on what investors are looking for and tips on exiting your newsletter business after you've built it up with a software that you can trust, because investors will pay attention to that. So yeah, that's where you can find me. Travis, thank you for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. And if you guys want a more in-depth with specific concrete examples about your software as a service sales funnel and how to sell it, our content team did a great job writing up specific things you can implement, test, and tweak. So check out that blog post in the comments. Until next time, talk soon.